Here's an interview I did on a podcast called Fantasy Focus. Take a look. We do a mock draft, a first round mock draft. It's good stuff. Check it out. Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode number 217 of the Fantasy Focused podcast, brought to you by the Original Hooters. Ryan Levy here with the old crew, Tater and Bucky, but we got a special guest, Mr. Smitty from the Fantasy Football Show, also on CBS Radio. Thanks for joining us, Smitty.
Yeah, glad to be on, guys.
Have you just decided to don the nickname Smitty after Steve Smith retired, or did somebody bless you with that nickname as when you were younger? I'm just curious how the story Smitty started.
Yeah, I kind of I feel like I wrote on Steve Smith when I was using Smitty, so I don't think I could be coined as stealing it. Yeah, I'm a dinosaur, believe it or not. I've been doing this for 16 plus years, but yeah, I've gone by Smitty growing up. So it kind of just stuck, and there have been a couple of people coming out with that nickname here or there. I realize Smiths are called Smitty, so I can't like patent it, but I definitely think I've been using it longer than anybody in the business, at least.
There you go. Thank you for joining us. Glad to have you.
To be here. Yeah, glad to be here.
Bucky, how you doing?
I'm hanging in there, man. You know, mid-work week here. Just got to find a way to squeeze this in, but really happy to be here. And I'm actually looking forward to a nice little mock draft action here, or at least mock first round. And I love that we put the pressure on Smitty there with the first pick. That's how we really like to get this thing cooking.
Does anybody have a trade offer for me?
I'll package my second, my third for you. We'll do a swap.
Well, what I typically trade up. I'm more of a and we can talk about this in a minute, but I'm more of a two-headed monster kind of guy. And I think if there's any year to ever do or deploy the two-headed monster, it's this year. With I'm giving away the two players that I like at 1 and 2, but McCaffrey and Barkley. If you can get those two guys on one roster, and you can do that in auction, and surround yourself with a bunch of sleeper receivers in a wide receiver pool that is so deep in 2020. I'm telling you, that's you're going to see me have at least out of my 14 or 15 or 16 teams that I do this year, because I don't know how to say no. I'll probably own Barkley and at least Barkley and Elliott, or Barkley and McCaffrey, and I'd say 3 or 4 of them on the same team. But that's me.
So you really feel that the receivers are deep enough to where you can take some flyers on it and you're going to capitalize?
Yeah, I mean, look at last year, Chark and all the guys, AJ Brown, you could have got so late. Now, if I always advise people to draft to their strength, a lot of people will say, oh, don't draft a QB early, a blanket statement that they try and cover everybody with. And the bottom line is, you may be great at landing the next Lamar or Mahomes. So waiting on a QB is a good approach for you. But if you do well landing your sleeper running backs and wide receivers and you kill it every year, then picking like a Mahomes or a Lamar early might be a good approach for that owner. So it's funny when people act like there's a certain way you've got to win. There are a million ways you can win. And I personally think, catering to my strengths, I'm always better at having 3 or 4 or 5 big guns. And I mean like top dogs, not just having a big player in each round. I'm talking about having 2 or 3 top 10 overall players. I always tend to more often than not win those leagues that I've assembled, those teams with that approach, given the sleeper type approach. I mean, my site sleeperu.com. So I focus on like sleepers and trying to find those next big breakouts. So clearly that's a passion of mine. So it caters to kind of the way I play.
I'm just glad that I've found someone that plays in 14 or 15 leagues just like me, so I don't feel as crazy anymore, Smitty.
Yeah, I got to cut back, though, man. It got to the point last year where once you play in enough leagues, you don't know what team has what even like a day later.
Correct.
So if a guy like Will Fuller was questionable and I went into my lineup on Thursday and I set my Thursday guys, Friday news would break, and I'd be like, I don't know what team he's on. So I have to go through.
It takes a while.
Teams. So it's like 4 or 5 times a week I got to go through every team. And there was times I started Will Fuller when he wasn't playing on 2 or 3 teams, and I just can't do it anymore. It sucks losing, because you can't get to your lineup in time. You know what I mean?
We need to
I
create
know
like a
what you
tweet
mean.
deck for lineups across multiple
Right.
interfaces.
Or some intern needs to set my lineup for me and manage all the injuries. Because I honestly, the ones that I knew were money, big, prop, big, you bragging right type leagues, I'd focus on those hardcore. But the other ones that I just like, yeah, I'll do that one. Yeah, I'll do that one. Like, I had to let those fall through the cracks. There were a couple teams that I literally had an amazing team, but I just couldn't keep up with adding and dropping with all the lives I do. I go live every Sunday morning, every Sunday night. I'm literally live like for about 7-hour block between Saturday Eve and Sunday morning. So it leaves no room for me to go in and adjust a Will Fuller.
I hear you on that, man. Before we get into the mock draft, I want to talk about some news real quick. Greg Olsen did sign with the Seahawks. Tater, initial fantasy thoughts there?
I mean, it doesn't really move the needle as far as his draft stock, whether he was going to be a Carolina Panther. Now he's with another top flight quarterback. I mean, if you consider Cam Newton a top flight quarterback when healthy anymore. But, certainly Russell Wilson catching passes from him doesn't hurt, but he's on his last leg. I wouldn't have been shocked to see him retire, to be perfectly honest with you. But he's probably someone that's struggling as like a top 15 play on a week-to-week basis. It's definitely rosterable in tight end premium leagues, but other than that, doesn't really move the needle for me much.
Smitty?
Getting paid a lot of money to not be focused on. So per start, I think is the key word here. Per start, he could be 10-ish, startable in fantasy football. Maybe he surprises, but the real question is how many games does he play healthy? So I think they're going to utilize him. It kind of sucks for Disley. We kind of all thought Disley could, emerge.
Right.
I think it's going to be tough. I think he's one of those tight ends you grab when you have like another 8 or 9 overall ranked tight end, and you pair him with him in hopes that maybe Olsen surprises, and then you can throw him in. But I don't know that I draft him to be my starter.
Bucky, what about you?
Well, I love Greg, and he's a guy that I've stood by my entire fantasy football career. But this is the year with Disley. I like Disley. I'm with you, Smitty. I feel like this is kind of a little shock to the system there, and it's tough to really put a mark on where Disley should land, considering you got future Hall of Famer potentially in Greg Olsen coming up the rear.
Go like this for me real quick. So hold your hand up. You look a little like Greg Olsen. You look a little like Greg Olsen right there.
That's the best compliment I've ever received, Smitty. You can come back anytime, pal.
When you do your show, just hold your hand like there. We'll interview Greg Olsen.
Yes.
Looks a little bit like him.
Yeah,
All right.
I just have a lot less hair and a lot more forehead.
Greg Olsen goes from being a XFL announcer this offseason to now playing in a high-powered offense that's run-focused, in my opinion. But you said it. I mean, solid quarterback there. I think he could score 10 touchdowns.
No,
Ooh, that's too much.
Set it at like 8.5.
no.
I'll take that under all day. Are we making our first bet of the 2020 season?
8.5, Tate.
Yeah,
Jeez.
8.5. I'll put a 50 spot on that, man. I'm going
got
under. I'm going under all day.
You got it, Tate.
It's
Right.
weird though, because I wouldn't call it impossible. It's definitely something I wouldn't bank on, but I'd say like 6 touchdowns or 7 touchdowns could be possible in the right. If everything goes right for me, stays healthy. I just worry about him staying healthy.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I'm
I
taking
hear
it
you.
under.
Because
All right.
opportunity should be there.
I also wanted to talk about Drew Brees. He is coming back. So basically, the cards shall fall now as Teddy Bridgewater and Taysom Hill. I'm curious to see what happens there. Could you see one of these guys ending up in like New England? I don't think all 3 of them are going to stay. There's no chance in hell, right?
Yeah, Bridgewater, I could see getting an opportunity, but why is everybody on this Taysom Hill bandwagon? The guy's never thrown an NFL touchdown pass ever.
I personally have. I think
Nobody
Sean
knows
Payton.
that.
I think Sean Payton's full of shit. Because if you really thought Taysom Hill was your quarterback of the future, then why did you give Teddy Bridgewater 5 starts when Breeze went down?
Right.
I don't buy that shit at all. No offense to Taysom Hill. I think he's a damn good football player, but we don't know what he is as a quarterback. I mean,
There's a stat that had Sanu and Taysom Hill matched up together, and Sanu destroyed him in terms of QB stats on his career. no one, literally nobody seems to know that he's never thrown an NFL touchdown pass.
It's crazy.
People are talking about him being, the future of a potential high offense, high octane passing attack. Like, I don't know. He would destroy, I think, the value of Mike Thomas to a degree. And I'm just glad Brees is back for one more year. Bridgewater, I think, could get an opportunity, but, will he thrive elsewhere, or will he be smart enough to be like, okay, if Brees is older, if Brees gets hurt, I could have a real damn good year, like a sneaky good year by staying put. That's how I'd feel. But if the money can talk, so we'll see what happens. But
hopefully he's in Tampa Bay.
That, but would he? You're assuming they would cut Winston?
Well, we're Bucs fans, so it's tough, man. We're all from Tampa originally, and I don't love paying Jameis $30 million.
No, and that topic to me is one of the hottest topics. Like, whenever I post anything on wide receivers, is Evans and Godwin. Which one do you rank higher? How can you, in your right mind, rank both of these guys top 5 to 7 when Winston is throwing 30 INTs? If Winston gets removed from that lineup or gets hurt, only one of those wide receivers is probably going to maintain top 5 to 7 wide receiver value, and that's the debate. Which one? People like to say that you're crazy if you have Evans ranked over Godwin heading into 2020. I personally have Evans a little bit ahead of Godwin. I can understand why people would have Godwin higher, but I think Evans is the one wide receiver that would survive QB chaos over there, and he's proven that he can play with, some chaos going on. Whereas Godwin, we only know what Godwin is, kind of like Fitzpatrick and Devontae Parker. Now we have, a situation where we have Godwin tied to Winston, and we don't know what he is without him.
This is true.
What do you guys think on that topic?
I personally think you just stick with Jameis, right? From a fantasy perspective, because the Bucs, they're going nowhere. Let's call a spade here. They're going nowhere. But from a fantasy perspective, no, I want my guy out there going 28 for 46, chucking up 3 interceptions because he's trying to do something big with the ball, and that usually results in big plays. And that's what we got from Chris Godwin last year.
From a rankings perspective for wide receivers and trying, let's say Dynasty, for example, can you count on Winston being in that lineup 2 years from now? Because if he's not, you're not having both those guys producing top 5 to 7 wide receiver numbers. So who do you rank higher if you're ranking, let's say, from Dynasty right now?
I'm still on Evans.
If we're going Dynasty for me, and it's a PPR format, I think the volume is a little bit, and the floor is a little bit safer with Godwin, because in that offense, proved last year, they moved him all over the formation. And Godwin, to his credit, seems as if he's a little bit craftier route runner than Mike Evans. I think he's very gifted after the catch, where it's not that Mike Evans is a scrub by any stretch. I mean, it's 5 seasons in the NFL or 6 seasons now, and it's like Mike Evans has gone over 1,000 yards every season. Yeah, and that's almost laughable to say Godwin's floor is better than Evans, but in this offense and considering how versatile Godwin's game is, that's why I would actually feel a little bit more confident with Chris Godwin moving forward over Mike Evans. I know it sounds crazy, but I just
love arguable, man. It's arguable. The only thing that isn't arguable is when someone says it's not arguable. That pisses me off.
Yeah. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. So
here's another X factor here, though, boys. This is Jameis post LASIK surgery. We might see a brand new light out there on the field, shining.
But not everybody responds well to LASIK, but we'll see.
Well, he should take a pay cut for that, like $25 million, since he's got the eyes and it's questionable.
Who knows? It could affect him in a weird way. To I don't know.
Make it worse. He's seeing triple out there, but Jason Witten says he might be open to playing at new teams. That's nothing really to talk about there. But let's get into the draft. Smitty, you're going to kick us off. Tater's going to go second. Bucky's going to go third. I'm going to go fourth. We're just going to go through 12 picks here. And I am interested to see who you take at number 1, Smitty.
Okay, so a month ago I would have taken McCaffrey, 10 times out of 10. I'm starting to warm up to the idea of Barkley being the true, not the true. They're both like neck and neck for me. I think I'm going to put McCaffrey there right now, but with the want to make a statement in saying that Barkley, to me, if I had the number 1 pick in 2 separate drafts side by side, I would take Barkley in one. I would take McCaffrey in the other. I think it's really hard to justify not taking McCaffrey number 1 if you've got the 1 draft. But I'm inching closer and closer every day to moving Barkley to my 1, and I think that by August that could actually happen. But McCaffrey for now. But
what are your
great for
reasons on that
Barkley, too.
upward? What's your reasoning on that upward trend for Saquon?
Everyone's talking about, this offense isn't going to be any good. They talking about coaching, and no, I mean the bottom line is Danny Dimes. They're probably going to draft a wide receiver. Barkley. This offense is it's going to be very much improved in 2020, and I think that people are really quick to jump on like coaching and saying, oh, this coaching change is going to do this. They're going to, I think, be a very big surprise in terms of offensive fantasy production in 2020. And I just think Barkley, he was great down the stretch, like toward the end. People right around like week 10, 11 were questioning when I put up a ranking on Instagram saying he's my number 2. People were like, oh my God, how do you have Barkley in your top 5? It was crazy. And everyone has short memories. Then he finished strong. And now everybody's back on, oh, he's the number 2 and number 1.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it's just he's the most talented running back in the league physically, and I think that he's just going to have the volume, the offensive support. If they draft a wide receiver, and Slayton matures, and Danny Dimes matures, and let's say Ingram stays healthy, I just see this offense being very dynamic and it being very hard for them to focus on stopping Barkley. And I don't see like a ton of 8-man fronts all the time for him. I just don't. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. Defenses won't be able to cover him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this offense is going to improve a lot because, they still got a talented tight end in Ingram. I love Ingram. I do agree that they probably need another receiver to go with Slayton and Shepard, but Tater, who are you taking at 2?
So I'm going to go ahead and say it is Saquon Barkley for all the reasons that Smitty mentioned. I actually think that people forget, too, that Saquon Barkley was dealing with a high ankle sprain. Right. And if he wasn't a freakish human being like he is and came back at the minimum of that return timetable, which was 4 to 8 weeks. He came back after 4 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. We don't even know if he was 100% really healthy. I mean, I'm assuming that he was because the Giants, they were really going nowhere this season. Why would you rush back your franchise player? But point being, I don't know if he was really 100%. It was just a little out of sorts. Daniel Jones was a rookie. I mean, and he looked like a rookie at times. And they, like you mentioned, they don't have really a truly number 1 wide receiver at this point. You like what you saw from Slayton and Shepard. Yeah. But this is a deep wide receiver class, one of the deepest since we've seen since 2014.
Yeah, if it's ranked, Lamb on that offense.
I mean, if they snag CeeDee Lamb, oh my God, yeah. I mean, you immediately Jerry Jeudy. I mean, and then you start going down the litany of wide receivers that are in this class. I mean, you can even snag a talented guy in the 2nd, 3rd round. I mean, just depending on how the board falls. But Barkley is still I think he's the best running back in the NFL. No disrespect to McCaffrey, who's one of the best weapons in the NFL. I think that Saquon Barkley right now, because there's not a great roster around him, I think he's kind of got a little bit of a Barry Sanders syndrome going on. I mean, he's the best, most elite player at his position, but in a situation that isn't ideal. I think if they can start putting talent around him, and Daniel Jones takes that next step, I think that we see Saquon Barkley return to form in 2020.
Daniel Jones will, I believe, take that next step. I think he could be a top 6, top 7 QB in fantasy in 2020, which I know a lot of people think is crazy, but I saw enough from him. He passed the eye test to me, and I was one that doubted him. I was one that laughed when they made that draft selection. I admit I was wrong. There are times where, honestly, I feel like, oh my God, watching one specific series and one game, I could see that he has the talent. And whether it unfolds in 2020 or it takes another year, I don't know. But you're right. I think I can't wait to see what they do in the 1st and 2nd round in terms of wide receiver. If they address the wide receiver position, I'm going to be all in on Daniel Jones. I'm already all in, but I'm going to think even more highly of him.
So, Smitty, you weren't glued to the TV for every Duke game?
No.
like the rest of us down here.
Yeah, I can barely watch college football as it is.
The other guy that I was actually between here was Michael Thomas in a PPR format. Again, if it's standard, then no way.
We're saying this is PPR, so we'll see where he falls. Because
I mean, I'm just, Smitty was going between C-Mac and Saquon. I'm higher on Saquon. I'm a full-on believer. But, when Michael Thomas catches 149 passes in a season, and that was with 5 games without Drew Brees, I mean, it's worth noting that a running back, someone like Derrick Henry, who has never caught more than 20 passes in a season in his entire career, they have to get up to 1,500 total yards just to even match his reception production. So, I mean, I'm not saying he's going to catch 149 again. I'm just saying his numbers, regardless of who was under center last season, was just off the charts. But I mean, I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley because I do believe that he's fully capable of finishing the season as the number 1 player overall in fantasy.
That was a perfect segue into my number 3 pick. I am going Michael Thomas.
What? That's crazy. I'm just kidding.
Exactly. You're nuts, Bucks. Get off the pod.
We tricked him.
Somebody kick Greg Olson off the pod, please.
Yeah, come on, Greg. He's going to take
Had an old third leg Greg sneak back in the mix. For Michael Thomas, look, do I expect him to finish next year with 150 receptions and over 1,800 yards? No, I don't. I actually expect those numbers to dip back a little bit. But at the same time, look at the output you're getting. Look at his growth year over year since entering the league in 2016. It's just every year it gets better. His touchdown production has been consistent throughout his career. And the offense he's in, knowing that Drew Brees is coming back home, I'm all for it. And I'm also, personally this year, especially in PPR formats, I have the running back bug. Whoever I pick, it's like they got a virus and I get it too, right? It's terrible. I can't touch a running back in the first round without it biting me in the ass. So, not literally, it's proverbial. But, it's one of those things for me where you look at a guy like Michael Thomas, I think, Tate, I think you could actually consider him at number 2. The production is just that consistent. He's that unguardable, and the entire offense is centered around him. And we kind of saw that turn around this year from a focus on Kamara with the extended production that Thomas had, the first season where they got together. It's one of those things where I think this is a no-doubter with Michael Thomas.
Can't guard Mike. Smitty obviously likes him. He's got a bobblehead in his car there.
Yeah, I actually carry this with me in my car at all times because I do a 365 days of Where's Mike, and I take photos of him all over the place, kind of like a gnome. So he's actually, awesome. I haven't done it in a couple of days, so maybe he needs to be on the podcast. So
I know, right? That's great. All right, so I'm picking at 4 here. I didn't expect this, but so for me, it's between Dalvin and Zeke actually at 4. I know you could probably make an argument for several guys in this position. So I'm excited if I'm picking in the top 6 this year because I know I'm getting a player that I love and I can build a team around. So at 4, I'm going to go with Zeke, though. Back-to-back seasons with 300-plus carries. He's a machine. This offense is built around him. We'll see what happens with Dak and Amari in terms of free agency, but I'm pretty confident that Jerry's going to open up his wallet and sign both of these guys. So I like Zeke at 4. I'm excited about my team built around Zeke.
Yeah, I like Zeke. I think he qualifies as a two-headed monster candidate. So if you have, I think, McCaffrey and Barkley and Elliott, McCaffrey, I think having 2 of those 3 guys qualifies as probably one of the best two-headed monsters that we've seen in like a decade. Back to like when Tomlinson was playing. So for me, I love all 3 of those. I would have taken Elliott had he fallen to me. But I do love Cook. He was a breakout candidate for me. He's in my intro video of every single video all the way back to January of last year when I launched the Fantasy Football Show, where I call him a top 5 running back. He's in my intro. It would have ended badly for me if he did not turn out to be a top 5 running back. So I love Cook. You're not going to find a complaint out of Dalvin Cook for me. I know a lot of people think they're changing that offense. They're not. They hired within Kubiak because they want to keep things the same. Kubiak produced Clinton Portis, Terrell Davis, Orlandis Gary, Steve Slayton during his top 5 running back year that probably no one even knows who that is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I remember that
Virginia
year well.
Mountaineer.
I love the argument that this is a bad move for the offense, or that the offense is going to change and go away from the run. If that bumps Cook down a spot or two for me, I'm happy to have a 5 or 6 pick this year. So Cook for me, but I would have went Elliott.
I can't believe I heard you dropping Atlantis Gary on us.
Yeah, he tore his
Fantastic.
ACL and played an entire half on a torn ACL. So Gary's got my mad respect for life on that one. I tore my ACL. I can't believe he played with a torn ACL. It was crazy.
That's a beast, man. That's a different type of beast.
Yeah.
I'm not a big handcuffer, but if you're drafting Dalvin Cook, I think Alexander Madison has standalone value. Like, you know, in a bye week situation or whatever, if you're desperate, if you got an injured team, if you're drafting him kind of as that insurance policy, he also has that standalone value to me.
Agreed. And I think that if you're a Cook owner, you need to reach a whole round ahead of his ADP, at least a round, if not more, just to make sure you lock down that situation, because Cook does have the injury risk. It's the only risk he has. I mean, the volume's there, the talent's there. I have no question about Cook being a top 5 overall player per start. It's just there is that injury risk. And Madison's so good, I'd call him probably the best or second best, or at least top 3 backup in the entire league, and one of the best standalone value grabs. But if you're a Cook owner, no one in your league has any business owning Madison than you. Like, you need to make that reach. Like, that's ridiculous if you walk out and you don't have him.
Yeah, that guy's a wrecking ball. Certainly is going to carve out his own little role regardless of Cook's health. But yeah, he's instantly one of those top 15 running backs if Dalvin Cook goes down. So he's a high priority handcuff on my list. But going at number 6, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Derrick Henry is a tough guy to try to figure out. And you mentioned how you hitched your wagon, so to say, to Dalvin Cook in your intro over on the Fantasy Football Show. 2 seasons ago, I felt like I was taking on the mass hordes on Twitter when I said Derrick Henry can be a top 10 running back in PPR formats. And, of course, Matt LaFleur didn't figure out through the first 12 weeks of the season in 2018 that Derrick Henry is the best back on that football team and the best way to run his offense. And it seemed like they kind of suffered from that this season a little bit. Henry just got ridiculously hot towards the end of the season. So the only thing that makes me a little bit hesitant, and I still would want to go with Alvin Kamara potentially here. And I know that Aaron Jones had a great year, but it was just, I mean, he scored 19 touchdowns.
Yeah, it was touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of it was touchdown based. I mean, Kamara still had over 1,300 yards and 81 receptions in 14 games. And unless they draft someone, Drew Brees is coming back. I think that Kamara comes back as far as scoring somewhere around 9 to 12 touchdowns this upcoming season. I know touchdowns are very tough to predict and almost impossible to predict. But when it comes to Henry, though, they committed to him as far as him being the focal point of the offense. They figured out a winning formula that got him all the way to the AFC Championship game and knocked off the defending MVP, or the reigning MVP, and the defending Super Bowl champions on the road. Large in part, if not the main reason, was Derrick Henry. So for that reason, he finished top 5 in PPR formats this season. I feel comfortable with his workload moving forward, even though despite the receptions not really being there, I still would go Derrick Henry here.
Yeah, I mean, my only thinking here is, and I can't fault you for that at all, and there's times where I do draft him, I worry about his size and how the hell he's going to stay healthy with that frame hitting the ground over and over, with people going at his knees constantly, because who wants to tackle that man from the waist up? And unlike Kamara, he does the bulk of his work is between the tackles, so that's harder hits, it's bigger linemen on top of him. But I'm with you in the fact that I still draft him, but what my strategy is to trade him by double-digit weeks while he's firing on all cylinders, because I think you could maybe get a lot for him, because people will be like, okay, he still is for real. I'm definitely going to pay the price now. I probably would go Kamara there, but I mean, you can't argue these are all so close. And Henry was so good to finish off the year and heading into the playoffs. Like you almost have to own him in one league in 2020. That's kind of my thinking.
Yeah.
But I agree with you in Kamara being a really hard person to pass on right there, because I feel like Kamara, kind of like Barkley, was hindered by injury, hindered by things that were kind of out of his control. and he's going to roar back in 2020. You make a great point about Breeze. Breeze being back, Breeze is going to get what he wants. He wants Kamara to get the ball a ton, and and we know what he can do with Breeze. Whereas, like, if Taysom Hill were there, Taysom Hill doesn't throw touchdowns. Mike Thomas would have 149 receptions and 0 touchdowns. So imagine what Kamara would have. So thank God for Breeze coming back. And good pick, though. I mean, would you trade him at some point, or would you ride the wave the entire season with Henry?
I mean, he's kind of like, if you're a comic book fan, he's kind of like the Juggernaut. Once he gets his momentum going, and it seems like once he gets into a rhythm with that offensive line and team, they just figure it out. It seems like towards the back half of the year. I would like to just keep a guy that I know the volume's going to be there. I understand where your thought process is, though. I mean, it's just that we haven't really seen Derrick Henry, even dating back to his college days, no significant injuries, even though he is somebody that is taking a lot of hits. He stands straight up, has a weird running style that just seems to work. He actually is very effective on the edges, too, just because if he gets a good, amount of momentum built up, and he has one of the best stiff arms, if not the best stiff arm in the entire National Football League out on the edges. He is a handful, but I mean, Kamara's caught 81 passes every single season in his NFL career. I mean, it's hard to pass up that pass-catching floor in that Saints offense that's tailor-made for a guy with Kamara's skill set.
You guys remember Brandon Jacobs, right?
Yeah, of course.
It's hard to, and I'm not comparing the two because Henry's a beast and Henry's a top 5 pick right now. But Brandon Jacobs, he was so big, people worried about that working at that running back position. And I don't even think God intended Henry to be a running back when he made him. He's like, dude, you're not built to be a running back. Don't try it. And Henry's like, no, I'm doing it. But Henry, for redraft, I'm okay with it. Like I could myself take him where you took him and really be fine with it. And I even traded for him in a dynasty league. But my intention in the dynasty league is to once I can get that trade value up is to trade him. I just worry about it for the future. 2020, I'm on board. But man, I don't envision 2 or 3 more years after this year of elite production out of that. Running backs oftentimes fall off the face of the earth after 3 or 4 years. So how can he, out of all running backs, endure? Your ligaments don't get bigger, and he's surrounding those tiny ligaments with mass we've never seen out of a running back. It's crazy seeing how big he is compared to other people. It's insane. The torque on those ligaments has got to be insane.
Yeah. Bucky, who you got at 7?
But for the record, Derrick Henry can't be killed by conventional weapons, so I feel that's a moot point.
Right.
I'm gonna go Kamara. Kamara's the pick here. I'm surprised and actually shocked, Tate, that you didn't go Kamara and you were gonna leave me sitting dangling with Captain One Dread. So I'm glad that I get multiple dreadlocks coming in with Alvin Kamara as opposed to one singular ponytail dreadlock. I like multiplicity. So I'm gonna go with the guy who does it on both angles. We're not talking just haircuts. We're also talking on the field. The guy's receiving. The guy's running the football. I look for a slight uptick in his rushing opportunities this year, hopefully a bit more healthy. And, I mean, the consistency is going to remain there on the passing front. Just get a few more touchdowns.
Makes sense, Greg. Makes sense, Greg.
What's that?
Good call, Greg Olson.
I said makes sense, Greg.
Oh, man, that's good.
That's the pick.
So, I'm picking back-to-back here now at 8 and 9. And then it goes Buck, Tate, and then Smitty, you're going to wrap us up. So we're going in reverse snake for the last round. So for me, I know you guys know, Smitty, you don't know this about me yet, but I always lean running back in the first round no matter what. So we're assuming here basically that we each have 3 different teams, right? So we're each going to get 3 picks in this draft. So for me, I'm going to start off with the running back here. Tater mentioned him earlier. Aaron Jones. A lot of touchdowns in this offense, and I still think they're going to win a lot of games. They're going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder this year. So I like Aaron Jones to have another 1,500-yard total yards season in 2020. So I think that's a good spot for him at 8. And then at 9, I'm actually going to go with Nick Chubb, who had nearly 300 carries last year. That might be a surprise to someone, or some people, I should say, at 9, but To me, I feel comfortable there with the new head coach and Kevin Stefanski, former offensive coordinator for Minnesota. We know they like to run the ball. I think the Chiefs are going to lean on him pretty heavily, and we'll see what happens with Kareem Hunt. If Kareem Hunt is not back there, I like Chubb even in the top 5. You could argue him for me.
Yeah, I don't love Chubb, man.
Yeah, that pick isn't giving me a Chubb.
Yeah, I'm not feeling too hot
think
Chubb.
Chubb worries me a little bit just because, he's had one of the most gruesome leg injuries we've ever seen. But, he stayed healthy last year, so there's an argument to be made, and he's falling at least far enough to where I feel like there's less risk than there would be if you were ranking him like 5 or 6. But, yeah, I don't dislike it. I don't think I could draft him in every league. Let's just put it that way.
But I think at 9.
Yeah, and I think Aaron Jones is in the same boat. Like, he was in my top 7 bold predictions for all of 2019. So I loved Aaron Jones. Very happy with that season he cranked out. I do worry about injury with him. The only time he's ever stayed healthy is when he's bulked up and been absolutely ripped heading into the season. So I think where I rank him in redraft is going to be very dependent on his offseason workout. If he reverts back to his old ways and he's not ripped and working out big time, probably going to lead to injury again. But I mean, you can't, honestly, besides Adams, Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, like guys like that, like these are the running backs that we're talking about here. Maybe Mixon, maybe Jacobs. So, I mean, if you're going running back, Aaron Jones and Chubb are the top backs at this spot. So I don't disagree with it.
What about Fournette? Tater?
I mean, it's Bucky's pick. So I'm waiting. I mean, I'm not showing my cards. I'm not showing my cards.
Fournette. Honestly, I don't love any of the running backs that are left on the board here. I feel squirrely about Mixon. I feel squirrely about a lot of these players. What's that?
Kenyon Drake should be a first rounder this year.
Good grief, man. Don't try to set me off my rocker over here, man. I can't afford
that. In the 15 leagues I guarantee you, if I'm picking at 12, I'll take Kenyon Drake in a league.
I love Drake. Drake will climb that high if something happens to DJ. If it doesn't, Drake stays hidden, tucked away nicely in a third round, top of the third round value. But if something happens to DJ, they cut him or trade him, people are going to have a knee-jerk reaction, much like people did with Chris Godwin when Godwin was a 6th or 7th rounder in January and February. And then the Arians comes out and says he'll catch 100 balls. And then he shoots up to the third round. That's what kind of impact a DJ release or trade will happen on Drake, and then Greg Olsen will be upset.
DJ is going to be a buck.
Greg Olsen, how you doing over there, pal? You keeping your composure?
Yeah, I'm trying to, man. There's a lot of discourse going on, a lot of moving parts, but I'm staying focused, just like our show here.
Yeah,
I think I would go with DeAndre Hopkins if I felt like he had a counterpart that would stay healthy and dictate some coverage. The problem that I have with Hopkins is, as good of a route runner as the guy is, as hard as he works, I'm just not sure that until we have a healthy Will Fuller going for 14 minimum games, that he's going to get requisite single coverage. Like, it's just not going to happen. Watson showed that when he's playing the tougher teams, it's either put up or shut up time, but it's 50-50 in between, in my opinion, with Watson. So I don't feel that high on Hopkins. I'm going to go Julio Jones. Again, I like Julio Jones. He has never let me down anytime that I pick this man up. I'm a loyalty guy. Smitty probably will dog me for that a little bit, although he does have a mini bobblehead of Mike Thomas that he goes parading around the world with, which that's loyalty to a T. That's loyalty to a T, and that's what Julio Jones means for me.
I don't have a Julio bobblehead, but I respect the pick. I do eventually worry in Dynasty about that foot. But in redraft, another year is definitely in the cards. I do wonder if Calvin Ridley will take a step forward. I really think he's a talent. But you can't argue Julio at near the turn pick, so not bad. Is it my pick?
No, Tater.
I've got one more. And Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins definitely come into consideration. I don't think there's anything wrong going with either of them in a PPR here. Or even Tyreek Hill if you want to make a case for him, or Godwin or whoever. But wide receiver feels deep to me. So for when you're looking at the end of the first round, 2 guys stick out to me. It is Leonard Fournette and Joe Mixon. Fournette, by the way, caught more passes this past year in 2019 than he had combined targets in his first 2 seasons.
Is that an anomaly, or do you think that's going to be the standard for him?
I think it's an anomaly, strictly because they did not have a specific pass-catching back to get him off the field on third down situations last year. Similar to Ezekiel Elliott, we saw Zeke go from 77 receptions in 2018 down to 54. We kind of saw an anomaly there. I think this is an anomaly. I think he could catch right around 50 passes. I'm not banking on Fournette seeing that much work again in the passing game, but it was nice to see that he was capable of producing that much as far as even just catching dump-off passes on a regular basis. But that's what brings me to Joe Mixon, is despite the fact that the Cincinnati Bengals were a complete disaster last year, the talent still shone through at the very end, and we saw what Mixon was capable with regardless of who was ever under center last season. And they're about to add, unless they screw it up, they're about to add Joe Burrow. I think that this offense will have far more scoring opportunities with Joe Burrow pulling the trigger. And then if they bring back A.J. Green, which they damn well should, I just think that this offense could be much more productive than it was this past season. And if they bring along some offensive line help, and by the way, they drafted an offensive tackle in the first round last season that entered the season with an injury. So this offensive line and this entire offensive unit can look completely different in 2020.
I get on board. I could get on board with that. I think I was against drafting Mixon last year because of my worries of the offense, and I feel like for most of the year that was correct. He started playing well at the end, but definitely disappointed in the beginning of the year. But I'm a lot higher on him this year because of the reasons you mentioned. I do think Burrow's a good quarterback. He's going to have his ups and downs like Daniel Jones or any rookie quarterback, but I think he's efficient. He looks accurate, and I think they'll build around him and they'll lean on Mixon a ton. And they'll be able to because I think Burrow will be efficient enough to make it so Mixon's not looking at a stacked box every time he gets the ball. And Mixon looked good, despite having to weather through a bunch of tough carries and tough situations that were handed in to him all year long. So I'm okay. I'm okay with that. And that leaves me with either Hopkins or Adams. Man, I don't know. Adams, I feel like he's getting more hype. I think as the offseason's moving along, people are starting to remember how good he could be. Ocho Cinco cried over his route running, which says something to me all on its own because Ocho Cinco is a very selfish man. So for him to call out another individual and cry over it, I took notice. But injury hampered him last year. I'm going to roll with Hopkins. I think it's really tough to pass on Hopkins at this point. I think they add a running back, whether it be through free agency or the draft, that makes the offense a lot more balanced, and that will help alleviate some of the concerns you were talking about earlier with the facing double coverages constantly. I just think Hopkins is like the best wide receiver in the game talent-wise. He's so good. It reminds me of Barkley in the sense that Barkley's not quite getting the credit he should get because he's the most physically gifted running back. I feel like Hopkins kind of gets that too. Like people don't realize how good this guy is and how hard he is to cover one-on-one. So give me Hopkins. I like that, but I would not shy away from going Adams if I had the same scenario going on side by side and mix it up. I love Adams in 2020.
Love it. So I'll wrap us up here in terms of everyone's picks. So Smitty's teams consist of, assuming we each picked 3 teams, Christian McCaffrey, who went 1 overall, Dalvin Cook at 5 overall, and Nuke Hopkins at 12 overall. So solid 3 picks there. Tater had Saquon at 2 overall, Derrick Henry at 6 overall, and Joe Mixon at 11 overall. Bucky ended up with can't guard Mike Thomas at 3 overall, Alvin Kamara at 7 overall, and Julio at 10. And I had Zeke at 4, Aaron Jones at 8, and Nick Chubb at 9. So that wraps us up in terms of the order.
Real quick challenge. Do you guys want to create a little league and add these guys in like a best ball league and pit our players against each other?
Yes.
I'm in.
If it's best ball, we don't have to worry about lineups or anything like that.
I'm in.
Hell yeah.
Smitty, since I know you're a degenerate fantasy player, and you have a hard time saying no like I do, we do have a fantasy-focused Dynasty League startup, slow draft starting soon. and then we'll do a rookie draft. And we have one spot open, $100 entry if you want to get in.
DM me. I probably will. So hold it for me, and let me see what I have on my plate. But I also might have a spot available. I don't know if you guys have heard about my '96 Pimp Battle of the Pimp League.
Yes.
I might have another spot opening up if you guys want to take it as a show, and run that team as a show. But basically, it's 96 teams in one draft in one division. 8 copies of every player thrown into the player pool.
Okay.
So it's going to be a crazy league. It starts March 1st. It'll probably take a month to draft, but you can pre-rank. It could take a week for you to get, from your first pick to your second pick, because there's 96 picks in every round.
That's crazy.
But 8 copies of every player makes it the exact same build as a 12-team league. Like, you're going to have Devontae Adams and Julio at 96, 97, 98 overall.
There you go. I love it.
You can't own one player twice, but 8 copies will exist for people to grab.
Count us in.
Woo! Yeah. So if there's a spot there, one might open up. I'll give it to you guys.
Yeah.
And the only requirement is that you promote the league as best you can. And there's a video that I'll send you guys that you can put out on social or whatever, saying that we're going to compete against everybody. But Monkey Knife Fight is in it. They've taken a team. And they're not giving it out. They're manning the team themselves. So they're one of the bigger DFS sites out there. Pat Mayo gave out a few spots on his show. There's all kinds of 100,000 Instagram accounts and fantasy couches in it. Like, there's a bunch of good people in it. So it's going to be fun, competitive, and it's half followers, half analysts and shows out there. So it's going to be an insane league.
There might be a new rival brewing, because I saw on your Instagram at the fantasy football show, there was a cooking with Smitty, and we've had cooking with Bucky going for a while now. So we'll have to have a cook-off.
Now, I'm not. Mine's.
You're a bad cook, though.
Mine's a comedy bit. Is yours real, Bucky?
Oh, I mean, it's real, but there's a lot of comedy in there too.
Okay. Yeah,
but the food is certainly not a piece of the comedy here, Smitty.
Mine is called reheating with Smitty. It's not cooking; it's reheating. So it's
there you go.
It's basically, the whole gist of it is you don't cook the food; you reheat the food that other people make for you, and you reheat gourmet meals that you've nothing to do with. So it got a bigger response than I had thought when I first did it. It was
I think it's kind of funny. Thanksgiving. Yeah,
people like that stuff. They do.
People want me to reheat more meals moving forward, and I taught people how to flip a riblet, I call it, in a pan, like all kinds of simple stuff that the common bachelor needs to know about. I'm not a bachelor, but I eat like one. So
yeah, I mean, my whole basis for cooking with Bucky is I only cook to 2 songs, one of which is Sicko Mode. The other of which is Orinoco Flow by Enya. So either one of those 2 really sets the kind of the meal for how we're going to move through.
Maybe some kind of cook-off sometime. All right. And we'll do some kind of best ball draft, or I don't know how we'll do it. Maybe I'll create something on a certain format or whatever, and then add these players and see how they do all year. We'll just leave in the lineup.
Sounds good, man.
I'm hoping Joe Mixon and Derrick Henry don't hold out then. Just kidding, but
hey, this is a test of whether we're feeling our picks or not. You know what I mean?
Right.
It is a good
100%.
It is a good way to reflect back on and be like, well, wait a minute. Am I taking a risk on this player or whatever? So yeah, it'll be good. Now I can't cuff Madison to cook. So maybe we would have drafted different. Who knows?
In retrospect, you're right. But that does bring us to our favorite segment of the show. Bucky, what's bothering you this week, pal?
Oh, boys, I did a beer Olympics this weekend. I was kind of a fill-in replacement. And let me tell you, when you get my age and you're basically presented with having to drink beers rapidly for over 3.5 hours, the end result's not pretty. But I did well. Of course I did. Probably the best. But here's the thing. We were up for the gold medal, and it's a team relay to finish out. We're called out on a technicality. I want your opinions of this. One leg of the relay was hula hoop while drinking a full beer. Okay, so you got a hula hoop. The only time you can drink is when the hula hoop is not touching the ground and you're attempting to hula. Problem was we had zero people that could hula hoop. So the fella that was in charge of that would simply just toss it around, try to hula, and really quick just slug downs. But it was a good orchestrated movement. It was rehearsed. We were ruled out, 20-second penalty, bumped us into second place, and I don't feel like that's appropriate. You can't hold me accountable for having to hula hoop.
That's rough, Bucks.
Yeah.
I mean, I can hula hoop, so I'd be slamming beers.
Can you slam a beer and hula hoop?
I've never attempted this feat.
Can't spill.
Smitty, have you attempted this?
My girlfriend can hula hoop for like an hour straight, so I don't even try, or I look like a fool next to her. So no, I can't.
Yeah, she would handle that leg of the relay, I'm sure.
She would have been a good piece of that team.
But yeah, it was a bummer, man. Team
I
New Zealand.
apologize for that third world problem you had there.
Yeah, it was a bad one. I mean, it has reach throughout the world. So I'm glad others can relate.
Yeah. Focused on training camp, Greg.
Exactly. Got a lot of work to do.
Get out there and run some routes, man.
Yeah.
So that'll do it for this episode of Fantasy Focus, brought to you by the Original Hooters. Want to go ahead and, again, thank Smitty from the Fantasy Football Show and SleeperU.com. You can check out, what is your Instagram handle, sir?
At the Fantasy Football Show, same as the youtube.com/the Fantasy Football Show. But yeah, you guys can come on sometime too. I'll have you on. I can have up to like 3 or 4 guests or whatever. But I go live all the time. I go live on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, Sunday mornings. I'm constantly live, sometimes 2 and 3 hours at a time. I did 2 separate 24-hour live streams where I was live for 24 hours straight. The second time I only made it to 18 because I had a really bad flu. It practically put me in the ER. But the first time I made it like 25 straight hours. It's just me. I'm a solo one-man band. So it wasn't like I rotated with anybody. I don't think I've seen anybody ever do that one sitting, one person. So it was kind of fun.
Did you take bathroom breaks?
Yes, I took, I think, like 4 or 5 like 30-second breaks where I'd yell, "I'm coming!" And the first time I did it in my studio, I didn't leave. The second time I dialed myself up on Skype on a split screen, went running, went to the store, did different things. Whereas the first time I started the live in my studio, which kind of was a mistake because I, then couldn't leave. But yeah, probably, I won't say never, but it's tough to do those. I could imagine trying it again, but I don't know if it's going to be anytime soon.
There you go. Love it, man. Well, thanks again for joining us, and see you soon.
Yeah, let's do it again. Later, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you. And that was, again, Smitty. You can check him out on the fantasyfootballshow.com and sleeperu.com. Of course, you can find our podcast anywhere that you digest your podcast, namely on iHeartRadio as of recently. So, of course, if this is your first time coming across our podcast, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, drop us a review. We really appreciate any and all the support. And until next time, later, says the Tater.
See ya.
Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show.